All right. Well, thanks for coming to another day at the Education Center here at 22 Too Many and Olympia Hempfest Central. Today we have a real treat. Vivian McPeak, the head guy over at Seattle Hempfest, huge supporter of 22 Too Many and veterans. You know, every year that we go and spend the weekend with them for Seattle Hempfest, they're a huge supporter of ours. That they let us do a veteran panel. We get to go to just about every stage in the place and spread the word about veteran suicide. So couldn't thank him enough. Today, Vivian's going to be talking about Advocacy Etiquette. This is the fourth class in a series that I wanted to bring to this education center to teach people how to talk when you go up to the Capitol. And we're fighting for these different laws, these different bills. There is a way you talk to people. There's a way you dress. Delivery is everything. And those of us that were around back for the days of the red shirts, you would understand how important this class is, this course is. The first class in this series was taught by Adam Cooper. He was the senior legislative assistant to Senator Colwell's, now King County Commissioner Colwell's. He's still on her staff. He taught the first one, and then you all know Kat Jeter. She got involved in this and taught one of the classes. And then John Novak from 420 Weeks, and now we have Vivian. And we'll close it out with one other, which we haven't found who it's going to be yet, but we wanted to have 5 in the series. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Vivian McPeak, and enjoy.
Thanks everybody for coming out on this rainy day. I'm honored to be in the company of Adam and Cass and John. Hopefully I won't completely repeat everything they're talking about. I want to start off, a little bit of my personal philosophy and talk about kind of email and social media and my feelings about protest in general, and then move into the legislative stuff. These are unique times right now. It's always an important time to be engaged and involved as a citizen. I feel it's our duty to be as informed as we can and to participate in democracy, certainly by voting, at least at the minimum, and by talking to our friends and our clergy and our neighbors and things like that. But most importantly, letting our lawmakers know what we want so they can represent us. They're supposed to be our representatives. Not supposed to represent the lobbyists or the corporations or other countries, but they're supposed to represent us, the citizens. It's supposed to be our government of and by and for the people. And in this country lately, we don't do a great job of talking to our citizens about their opportunity and their responsibility to participate. It's always a good time to think about what you put in an email or what you put on social media or in a message board or a forum, because unlike a phone call or something like that, that stuff never goes away. It's always going to be there. And you never know what the next government, the next administration is going to be like, or the one after that. And so, you want to be careful how much you reveal things that might be looked at as threatening or controversial or too out of the mainstream. And for most people that's not an issue, but some people tend to get pretty carried away, especially in the environment like we have right now where things are pretty divisive and pretty heated. So I just want to caution people to be really kind of careful and think twice about what you write on social media or online and things like that. Because that stuff could come to visit you later on, and you never really know how crazy things are going to get. If legislation, if talking to your legislators and writing letters to editors and talking to your friends, being active on social media, if that stuff isn't being effective and doesn't work, sometimes you need to protest, take to the streets, which is our First Amendment and Fourth Amendment rights to some degree. And I'm a very firm believer in satyagraha, principles of nonviolent resistance, and that's what Mahatma Gandhi and the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Employed. I don't personally believe that there's many causes that that justify property damage, going and damaging public or private property just because you feel something's important to you. I don't think there's any political issues that justify violence of any kind. In short of a revolution or a military coup or something like that. It's been since the Civil War in America that I think things have been to that degree. So I don't personally support any of that stuff. I believe in peaceful, nonviolent activism of all kinds. And to some degree that washes over into how you talk to your legislators. I don't believe in wearing masks at protests myself for a couple reasons. Number one, I think that as an American, if you're not willing to put your face behind your beliefs, you're probably doing something kind of hinky that you probably shouldn't be doing. The other thing about masks, first of all, it freaks out the public completely, makes you look like a criminal, freaks out the police, puts them at unease. But most importantly, if you start wearing masks, whether it's a bandana on your face or a Guy Fawkes mask or any of that stuff, now you've made it absolutely simple for someone to infiltrate you, for a provocateur to join you and be right next to you, and you have no idea who that person is. And they might start doing stuff like throwing bricks or rocks or setting fires or throwing bottles at cops, stuff like that kind of instigates a whole mob, and the next thing you know, they're breaking windows. And I've been involved in demonstrations several times in my life where people started doing that stuff. Started breaking windows and started doing stupid stuff that I thought wasn't cool. I was on an ACT UP march one time in the 90s in Seattle, and people started breaking windows of privately owned businesses on Capitol Hill. I'm like, you guys realize that you're breaking windows of businesses that have nothing to do with the man or anything like that. And the last thing I'll say about that is, some people I know have been really proud because I broke the windows in the bank. And I'm like, okay, well, that's really smart. You know what's going to happen? The bank manager is going to get on the phone. He's going to call the insurance company. The insurance company is going to fix the window and charge them a bunch of money. They're going to hike up the premiums for the bank. The bank's going to pass that on to their customers, and then everybody else is going to be paying for it. You didn't do anything to hurt the man or fight the system at all. It's completely stupid and counterproductive. Worse than that, you start breaking windows and setting cars on fire and throwing bricks and rocks at cops and doing things like that. Now the cops are going to have riot gear and tanks, and there's going to be, next thing you know, there's going to be cameras everywhere, and it just completely backfires. And they're going to get a blank check to clamp down. No one's going to care, and it means they could start hurting people and breaking people's heads and things like that. Yet, if you just sit down peacefully in the middle of the street and refuse to move and be peaceful and nonviolent, they can't really get away with that stuff without really strict, harsh media and public scrutiny. So those are my feelings on all that kind of stuff. Like Patrick was saying, the red shirts, and if you watch the documentary, what was it called? It's a documentary on the I-502 campaign. It's escaped me right now. It'll probably come to me. You'll see that they were the red shirt folks, the kind of divisive, hateful, spiteful haters, I'll call them, were very present in Olympia, and they were calling legislators names and questioning their motivations and their integrity and things like that. And it really backfired. And I sat across the desk from Senator Karen Frazier in Olympia here. I sat across the desk from Senator Hasagawa. And both of them told me these guys are blowing it for you really bad, and that my fellow legislators have a really poor view of medical marijuana patients. They think that medical marijuana patients are crazy and out of control and rude and things like that. And I think it really, really backfired. And the reason that it's important to know how to talk to your legislators and to know how to engage them is because every single year, while we're living our lives, they're creating bills and legislation that's going to affect us, that we're going to have to live under. They're creating the laws that govern how we are going to be ruled. Just right now, there's 50 bills in the House, 50 bills in Olympia dealing with cannabis issues, maybe more than 50. Senator Brad Kipper has a couple bills, one to criminalize parents for toking and vaping in the presence of or near their children. There's one to increase the civil penalties for public display that he's passing. There's one to completely get rid of I-502 and medical marijuana in the state of Washington. And there's one that would make it so that you can only get cannabis if you're 21 and over with a prescription in pill form. And this is what these guys are trying to pass right now in Olympia. I'm hearing that those bills aren't doing well, but I'm hearing that other bills that are extremely important also might not be doing that well. Bills that are very important to the people in this room. Sadly, one bill that's doing very well that I think is going to pass for sure is Senator Reuben Carlisle's bill to make advertising illegal, cannabis advertising illegal outdoors. And that means the people spinning the deals in front of the cannabis shops and billboards and sandwich boards and stuff like that are probably going to get outlawed this session. I really think that's probably going to happen. And they keep citing tobacco laws that you can't advertise tobacco, but they don't say anything about the fact that you can advertise alcohol that way. And everybody knows that alcohol can make people crazy, and it's very addictive. Angry. Makes people can make people belligerent.
They advertise right on our TV and to our kids' heads.
Yep, that's right. I know, and alcohol is responsible for suicides and violence and domestic violence and car accidents and illness and cancer and all kinds of things. I don't necessarily think it should be illegal because I don't really support prohibition. But all we're ever asking for in the cannabis movement, all we've ever wanted was equality, man. Just give us the same rights that other people have. If they can have prescription drugs and alcohol and have a gun, then we should be able to have cannabis and own a gun. Really simple. If they can bank and their businesses can have deductions for their operating expenses, then we should be able to have deductions. Starts off with a quote from Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Let us never forget the government is ourselves and not an alien power over us. The ultimate rulers of our democracy are not a president and senators and congressmen and government officials, but the voters of this country. And he said that when he was president of the United States. Kind of refreshing, huh? And then contacting your representative. The political environment's never been so potentially promising for reforming our failed, flawed cannabis laws, which is really true. So I want to move on to the basics about our state legislature. Our Washington state is separated into 49 legislative districts. Voters in each district elect one senator and 2 representatives to serve in the legislature. The senators serve 4-year terms and the representatives serve 2 years. Elections are in even-numbered years. Senators serve overlapping terms, so half of the Senate is elected every 2 years. Washington State Legislature is a bicameral body with 49 members in the Senate, 98 members in the House of Representatives. Each district is served by 1 senator, 2 House members. Every other year, our state legislature makes decisions on the budget. The legislative session lasts for 105 days on budget years, 60 days on non-budget years. You know, they get paid a pretty decent amount of money, and they don't do a whole lot of work, really, you know. They get a lot of time off, and in the meantime, we're slaving away, paying their wages. And, right now in the federal government, they're trying to take away our health care, and they get the best health care money can buy, them and their families for the rest of their lives on the public dole. I'd change that personally, and I also would put some term limits in there because we've got these people in there that are career legislators, and they've got one priority, and that is getting reelected. Today, 1 month into his presidency, Donald Trump has a campaign rally going on today for re-election in 2020.
I have an observation about that I'd like to share.
Well, you know.
By calling it a campaign, he can invite who he wants to be there.
He can also raise money for it. He can also pay for it, and he can also collect money. And he's not governing right now. 1 month in, he's campaigning for 220. It's just, it's not that more outrageous than the usual stuff, but it is outrageous. It just takes a minute to find out who your representative is. If you're using the telephone, you can look in the blue pages of your local phone book. Remember phone books? In most counties, the county auditor's office should be able to assist you in locating and identifying your district, and in certain counties you can contact the county records and elections. The Women League of Voters puts out a really great pamphlet every couple of years, which has a lot of great information on how to contact your legislators. It's also on our website as well, hempfest.org. And the thing I want to say is that you can send an email to your legislator. I think anybody who has email knows how easy it is to ignore an email. You don't even have to open it if you don't want to, and you can just delete it. So that may or may not be seen by a legislator. A lot of legislators have their aides reading their email, so they may or may not even hear about it. Or you can give your legislator a phone call, and that's going to be answered by an aide, probably not your legislator usually. And you're going to tell them what you're concerned about, and they're going to write down a synopsis of it. Supports this. Doesn't support. They'll listen to you, and they'll act like they're writing down everything that you're saying, but more than likely it'll say wants this, supports that, and it'll just be a sentence. It'll be a checkbox on a form or something like that. Or you can write your legislator, which is really the second to the last best way. And that may or may not be read by your actual legislator. That may be read by an aide as well, who may put a synopsis of that, may or may not tell the legislator what it said. But when you go and you meet your legislator, when you've got an appointment, and you go and you actually sit down across from the desk in the same room as your legislator and look them in the eye, I can guarantee you they're going to hear what you're saying. And that they know that if you're serious enough to go and sit down across that desk from them and talk to them, you're going to be serious enough to vote. And you're going to be serious enough to be telling your friends what's going on. And I'll tell you, there's only 3 things that these politicians care about, 95% of them. There's only 3 things they care about. Votes, money, and anything that turns into votes and money. Those are the 3 things they care about, and they don't care a whole lot about nothing else. They're a lot of them are very principled people, and they definitely have their pet peeves, and they have the things that they personally care about that are important to them, culturally and politically. And so they'll be working on that stuff to some degree, but they're really going to be working on getting reelected, because that's what it's all about. And on one level, they don't want to lose their job, and I'm sure they like the perks of being in the office. But on another level, that makes sense, because if they don't get reelected, that means somebody from the other party got elected instead in their place. And so sometimes the best thing you can do is to be keeping the other guy out of office. We look at the last 8 years and the amount of gridlock that took place, the amount of obstruction that took place. And some people may say, well, not much was done. Well, that works both ways. If not much was done good, not that much done was bad either, because there was somebody filling that chair and filling that desk. And so there are reasons to be reelected, absolutely. And so, the basic point of that is, if you go and you meet with your elected representatives and you tell them what's in your heart song, they're not going to forget that. They're going to remember that, and that's going to have an impact on them, and that's the single most important thing you can do to influence legislation. How do you do that? When you make an appointment in advance, right? You can't just drop in on them. You want them to be happy to see you. As Patrick said, it's important to be presentable and dress nicely. Why? I've had people say, well, they're working for me. Why do I need to dress nice and look any different from I normally do to go talk to my legislator? And my answer is, you don't. You can show up any way you want. But do you want to be effective? It's really about being effective, right? And if you want to distract them and have them thinking about, how frumpled up your clothes are, the dog hair that's all over your clothes, or your crazy messy hair, or your BO, or whatever it is that you weren't aware and self-conscious enough to take care of, then they're going to be thinking about that as much as they're going to think about what you said. And that's a distraction. Until 6 months ago, I had a beard. Let's back up. In 2006, I had a huge beard, this big, and dreadlocks, full dreadlocks all over, long hair. and stuff. I'll be honest with you, I didn't go to a lot of town meetings, town halls. I didn't go meet my legislator very often. I was a full-time activist. I'd been an activist for over a decade and a half at that point, and I was doing a lot. I was doing more than a lot of people. But I also knew that I wasn't necessarily probably going to be the best person to go and represent my cause, because I really didn't look the part. And I'm not saying that people shouldn't meet their legislator if they have long hair or anything like that. I'm just saying that the nature of my dreadlocks was that it was really hard. I just couldn't pull it back and not still have it be all kind of crazy and out of control and stuff sticking around and stuff like that. And so I choose to work behind the scenes, and I choose to influence people to go and speak for me and things like that, because I felt that I was kind of a distraction. What happened is I saw myself on the news one time speaking for HempFest, and even to me, after everybody else I saw on the news and then it came me, I went, man, I really look freaky, even to me, when I see myself compared to everybody else. And I realized that, what people sitting at home are probably thinking is, oh, look at that freaky guy, look at that crazy guy, look at him, instead of what I was talking about. And so I cut my hair, and I trimmed my beard down to a goatee, and I didn't cut the dreads in the back. I shaved my head and I let my hair grow out, and I would comb my hair back and braid it into my kind of crazy dreads, and that was my compromise, so that at least when I was from the front, when I was on the news, I could tone it down a little bit. And it's sad to me, frankly, that we live in a society where you're judged by your appearance to that degree, where superficial things that really don't make it makes as much difference as your hair color or your skin color or your eye color or your clothes don't mean anything really about your integrity or your character or anything like that. But that's the society that we live in. It's extremely vision conscious. And now with television and things like that, it's even more so with Hollywood. So it's really about strategy. It's really about your tactical maneuvering of how effective do you want to be. So you can look like anything you want, but if you want to be, it's when in Rome, do as the Romans do. So it's good to wear, if you're a man, it's good to wear a button-up shirt and comb your hair nicely and shave if you don't have a beard, and wear some newer clothes and go kind of represent. And what that means is that means to them that you're experienced and self-conscious enough to respect them on that level because you're in a formal environment in the state capitol. It's important to be polite and know your issues and go in knowing what you're going to ask for. You want to be succinct and you want to have an ask. You're taking up their valuable time. You're taking up time that they would normally use studying an issue or talking to other legislators or what have you. So it's important to not waste their time and to use it as effectively and as responsibly as you can. Be organized. Introduce yourself. If you're in a group, sometimes it's common that you'll be at a lobbying days or something, you'll have 2, 3, 4 people that'll go in. Choose one person to be the primary spokesperson for every issue. Know what you're doing so you don't have people talking over each other and vying for their attention and distracting them. Don't assume that your legislator is familiar with your issues. Recognize that they have a lot of issues before them. They have a lot of bills before them. They may need to be briefed quickly on your subject. Focusing on specific pending legislation is a lot more effective than offering just general observation on issues. Very important to do your homework. Identify your subject. Always give the name and the bill number of the legislation you're referencing if you know it, if there is one. And know your legislator's voting record on your issue. Do some research. Look up what their past voting issues are so you have an idea kind of where they're going to be on it. Present the facts in an orderly manner. Do not present purely emotional arguments, but demonstrate the impact of your issue with an example. Stories are good. Examples are good. If you have a life experience, if you're advocating for someone who's ill in your family or for your child who has a condition or for somebody you know that got fired, it's always a lot better to have some kind of a concrete example to demonstrate why you feel passionately about what you feel so they can wrap their mind around it so they can connect to it on a heart level because everybody is a human being. Allow some time for questions. Encourage questions, answer them thoroughly and factually. because your legislator is going to be curious about your subject if you pick something that's really juicy. If you don't have an answer, don't make something up. Offer to get back to your legislator after you found out, and then make sure you do and follow up. That's when email is really good, actually, because if you've already talked to your legislator about something and they've asked you, and you've promised them you'll give them some information or you'll give them a document, etc., well, then it is going to make it to them, and they are going to look at it because they're expecting it. Wrap up your meeting on time. Don't drone on and on and on and not be aware of the time and the clock, stuff like that. Don't repeat yourself over and over and bore them, because that'll irritate them, and then that'll affect how they look at your situation. Be willing to have an ask and be willing to probe your legislator. Ask them where they stand on your issue. Ask for some action or a commitment from your legislator. So go in having an ask. Say, how are you going to vote? Will they take a stand for or against your issue? Can they commit to a position at that time? If not, can you get back to them later? They do work for you. And so you don't want to be rude, but you want to be pushy to a certain degree. You want to be firm with them. When contacting your representative, be persistent. It's okay to be persistent, you know. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. And when it comes to this kind of stuff, that's really the most accurate statement. Don't be a pest, but don't be afraid to follow up as many times as it takes. Your representative's job is to be responsive to your inquiries and represent your interests. A little patience and tenacity can go a long way in making the kind of quality connection with your representative that it takes to influence political outcomes. You know, if they're halfway cool and genuine, they're going to respect the fact that you've been diligent and that you've been consistent and that you're not just going away and taking no for an answer. It's really important to follow up if you can with a thank you card in which you restate your position on your issue and then thank your representative for taking time out from their busy schedule to meet you. That kind of stuff goes a long ways in just your regular life. It goes a long ways in a professional life, and it goes a long ways in your political life. Now, getting to the red coat type folks, and it's not just them, it's happening all over the country. People are extremely passionate. Things are ginned up, and they often are with politics. And people can get very angry and frustrated because some people are fighting for their life, if it's a medical issue. They're fighting for their job, they're fighting for their future, fighting for their bank account. But never insult, threaten, or bully your representative. Just never do that, regardless of how passionate you feel about an issue. That kind of behavior is always going to be counterproductive. It's never going to be good. It makes no difference whether you're sending an email, making phone contact, meeting in person. Always be polite. Always treat your representative or their assistants with respect. Because if you don't, man, if you challenge them on an ego level and you insult them and you insult their integrity, well, then you're going to get their ego involved in it, and then they're going to probably put up a blank wall, and it really doesn't matter what you say or how good your argument is. It's going to be a matter of principle to them, but they're not going to hear what you're saying. And if you go as far as these folks did around the I-502 time and start calling them names and pointing fingers at them and calling them four-letter words and things like that, then they're gonna be a brick wall between them and you, and they may defeat your stuff on purpose, you know, because now they're pissed and now it's personal to them, and you want to make things personal on a positive level, not a negative level. It may be most effective to send a letter to representatives from your local congressional district or to senators from your state because you directly elect them. And it may be harder to meet them in person if it's, especially if it's a federal senator or somebody like that, that they've got a lot more demand on them. A printed letter with the appropriate letterhead, if available, should succinctly state the purpose of the letter. If your letter is about a specific bill, it should identify the legislation by name and number. The one thing I want to say about that in this post-911 environment that we're in right now is, if you send a letter to a federal senator, it's not going to get to them within a couple months because this has to be screened for anthrax, if you can believe it or not. Anything in an envelope is going to have to first go to a different agency that's going to have to screen it, and that takes months. So it's good to write a card. That's why right now postcards might be better, because that goes directly to them. Nobody's screening that to see if there's poison in it. It's sad that we live in that kind of world, but we do. A lot of people don't realize it. Identify yourself. To get a response, be sure to include your name, address, phone number, email address. These days, Twitter is starting to become an actual functional way to communicate back and forth in 42 characters. To get a response, and any credentials that you may have are really good. If you have a professional credential, if you have an educational credential, it doesn't hurt to add that stuff. And certainly explain why your issue is important and how you're impacted by it. And again, another point, life stories are great. A lot of times legislators will get up on the floor of the House or the Senate and they will repeat a story that someone's told them, a life story. They'll actually repeat that, and they'll repeat it sometimes in the media as well. So you're actually giving them ammunition when you tell them, this happened to me, and I was in the hospital, and I lost my insurance, or I lost my job, or my child has this disease, and this is how this is going to impact my child's life and future. You're giving them ammunition, you're giving them stories that they can use to talk to their fellow lawmakers and convince them, because everybody knows a story is easy to remember. In that context, a story is emotional, and people can, once again, connect on a heart level, because really, man, the heart level is how everything happens in this world. Keep your letter to 1 page or less. Use specific examples to demonstrate your position. Clearly request what you are seeking. Thank your representative for taking time to read your letter. Once again, the most important thing, always be polite, civil, and respectful. Many legislators have district offices. Most of them have e-newsletters to which people can subscribe online. Although those running for office can't send any out until after the election. The last page has got some resources that are fairly static. Frequently called numbers is done for the bill room, the campus operator, the governor's office, the secretary of state's office. As you know, our governor has been very active right now in things on a national level, basically opposing some of the policies of the Trump administration. Our attorney general, our AG is also being very vocal. I wouldn't be surprised if. Yes, he sure did. Our state's leading the issue nationally, been all over the news. I wouldn't be surprised if our governor ends up running for president. I wouldn't be surprised if our attorney general ends up running for governor. You can take a tour, as you guys probably know more than most people live in the state. You can take a tour of the Capitol anytime you want to. There's toll-free legislative hotline. There's a hearing impaired toll-free hotline for people that don't hear so well. You can always go to the home page. You can always look at the legislative calendar to see what they're doing. You can learn how a bill becomes law with a Washington legislator handout. And you can always get a hold of your members of Congress at their offices in Washington, D.C., or their state offices. Every federal member of Congress has a state office. You can contact them at the U.S. Capitol Switchboard. And your issue will be noted. The other thing is that I think that's really important is to support most people are busy just trying to live, just trying to pay their rent these days. It's really hard to stay on top of all the issues. It's really hard to check more than one media source out so that you're getting both sides of the story, just because time is of the essence and time is valuable these days. However, there are people whose jobs are staying on top of all that stuff. There's people whose jobs are lobbying. There's people that work with organizations that work full-time, 5 days a week, some 10, 12 hours a day, trying to influence legislation. So every citizen can only do so much. So I think it's really important to also identify what organizations and what lobbyists, the lobbyist is kind of a bad word, but they're out there and they're working and they're doing stuff. And support them and give them attention. Also let them know it's important to you as well, because you'll influence them. So, if you can afford to give money to people like that, do it. If you can afford to give money to campaigns, do it, because all of that stuff matters. We saw that Bernie Sanders was able to generate as much or more campaign donations than Hillary Clinton, even though she was taking huge amounts of PAC money and things like that, dark money and stuff, a lot of corporate money. And he was able to do it with average $27 contributions. It can happen. It only happens if people give the money. And so that's going on. We really need campaign finance reform is really important. I have very little hope that's going to happen in the next 4 years. But these are really important times. These are challenging times. But there's a silver lining to every black cloud. And I hope that the silver lining is that citizens are being more engaged and feeling more motivated and hopefully coming together. There's a lot of division going on right now. I've never seen anything like it. The division, the vitriol, the finger pointing, the circular firing squads within certain political circles and stuff like that. The blame shame game is going on really, really big right now. Frankly, I think that's a huge distraction, and we really need to be figuring out where's the common ground, what can we all agree on. Even the dichotomy of the two major parties and then the two secondary parties. Of course, the two major parties, Democrat and Republican. Two secondary parties, the Green Party and the Libertarian Party, and then it breaks down from there. We're so divided. I've really never seen anything like it. My grandfather was a senior national representative for the American Federation of Government Employees, AFL-CIO. When I was 10 years old, I was an honorary member of 2 union locals. I was introduced to Hubert Humphrey, the vice president, by my grandfather twice. I have at home a Western Union telegram from Robert F. Kennedy inviting my grandfather to the Ambassador Hotel, where he ended up being killed. And the reason I'm bringing this up is that in my grandfather's day, and we're talking about the late 1960s, it was really common for federal senators, congressmen, to be arguing vociferously on the floor of the House against each other about bills and everything. And then they all had the same watering hole that they met after work, and they all drank together. They all knew each other's wives and husbands and stuff. They knew about each other's family members and stuff, and they were friends. They were peers. And that shit's just not happening now. They hate each other on a lot of levels. Most of them hate each other's guts. And that's where it's gotten. And now it's gotten to the point where citizens hate each other's guts, because they're members of different parties and stuff. My great uncle and my grandfather. My grandfather was a hardcore Democrat, and his son-in-law, his son-in-law, my uncle, was a hardcore Republican. And they had this good-natured fight going on. They loved each other tremendously, and they would hang out on Christmas and on holidays and everything. But one time, my uncle, at a Christmas holiday, my uncle went and snuck a Eisenhower sticker onto my grandfather's bumper. And he was driving a Union car, an AIGE car. And so he drove around for about a month with his I Like Ike bumper sticker on the back of his car. And when he found out, he was good-naturedly pissed. So he took an I Like Ike yard sign and made it say Ike licks dick, cut it up, spent all night cutting it up, and then drove all the way to Santa Barbara and put it on his lawn, on the lawn of his house. And but they joked about it. They laughed. They were laughing in those days. These days, you might get shot doing something like that. So, I just hope that we get to a point where we can find common ground and agree on something, because gridlock is not how politics works. It is not how we move forward. Politics was famously, traditionally called the art of compromise. It's just not that way anymore. It's my way or the highway, scorched earth, all or nothing. And some folks are willing to freeze the government down or to shut it down, not even pass a budget, just to get their way. And it's not good, and it's getting worse real fast. And it's challenging. I mean, what do you do? If the opposing party is willing to just shut everything down and not let you pass anything, and then you get in charge, if you don't do the same thing, then they're gonna roll right over you. Sometimes you got to give them a taste of their own medicine, and that's the kind of catch-22 that we're in right now, the conundrum. What do? You know, if you reach across the aisle and they slap your hand, and then you get in control, and then you work with them, then you're looking weak, and you're looking like a pushover. But what's the alternative? It's really a tough time. It's just a challenging time right now. I don't know what the answers are, but I know that with Seattle Hemp Fest, the world's largest pot rally, the world's largest cannabis policy reform event, America's largest annual free speech event. We started 26 years ago, and my influence from the day one was to say we're not going to have any human enemies. No human enemies. We're against prohibition only. We're against policies, not people. We're against policies, not personalities. And there's a few reasons for that. Number one, a person can change. Somebody can change their attitude. They can change their opinion. You know, what I would rather than try to vote somebody out, I would rather have changed their opinion. So they say, you know, I've been thinking about what you said, and maybe you got a point. Well, maybe I need to think about this for a while. And I guarantee that if you get up there like a redcoat and you said, you're a snake and you're a liar, they're not going to answer your phone. And you know, when you call them up, they're not going to answer the phone. And you're not going to say, you know, with all due respect, legislator, senator, with all due respect, I think that you're wrong about this, and here's why I think that you're wrong. And I think it'd be great if you could look at take it from my perspective. And if you are calling them names, you're not going to get that far. But they might 2-3 times into that, they might go, you know, I've been reading the stuff that you wrote. I've been looking into some of the research that you sent me. I've been thinking about this issue. And you know, maybe you've got a point. That actually happens. And so we started off saying we're not going to have any enemies. Number one, it's just why make enemies? No, why make enemies? Because if you make it personal, it's like with a cop. You make it personal, now he's going to be working against you on his private time. On his time off, he's going to be out in front of your house watching what you're doing, taking notes and stuff, because you pissed him off so much. You've made it personal, right? So that's why I don't believe in that kind of personal attacks, even with people that you disagree. HempFest decided that we were going to have no human enemies, and I think the proof's in the pudding, man.